Perfect. Welcome to our Santa Clara River Watershed Committee meeting. To save on time today, well, there's actually not too many people here. Um, we'll go around the room and just do a quick round of introductions. I'm Lauren. I work with the Resource Conservation District, and I'm the coordinator for the Santa Clara River Watershed Committee.
I'm Rachel Ray, and I'm also work for the Ventura County Resource Conservation District.
Tony Emmert, United Water, and Fillmore and Piru Basins, GSA.
Lisa Tate. I am a farmer. I'm on the Ag Policy Advisory Committee.
Jody Schweitzer, Water Program Director with the Farm Bureau.
Ben Fischetti, Ventura County Watershed Protection.
Michael Durazo, Field Rep for Supervisor Kelly Long.
Marissa Carangella, United Water Conservation District.
Haven Whipple, United Water.
Evan Lashley, United Water.
Laura Schellenberger. I'm here with the Ventura River Watershed Resilience Project.
Morning, Lynn Rodriguez, also with the Ventura River Watershed Project.
Thank you so much for being here in person. If you are joining us over Zoom, can you please write your name and affiliation in the chat? And we'll start with Holly. Can you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Holly Wright with Channel Islands Restoration, and I'll be giving an update for Friends of Santa Clara River, or back to Friends of Santa Clara River.
Okay, Amanda.
Good morning, everyone. Amanda Begley from Tree People.
Christina.
Hello, everyone. My name is Christina Johansky, and I'm also from the Ventura County RCD.
Helen.
Helen McGrath. We farm in Fillmore and Somis, and I'm on 3 different water boards.
Mohammed.
Mohammed Hassan, United Water Conservation District.
John.
Hi, John Demers from Fox Canyon Groundwater Management Agency.
Melanie.
I'm Melanie Morgan, and I'm with the Ventura County Agriculture Weights and Measures.
Peter.
Peter Schellenberger. I'm with the City of Ventura Public Works Department.
Sarah.
Good morning, Sarah Mulder, also with the City of Ventura and Ventura Water Department. Thanks.
Taruna.
Hi, sorry, couldn't find my unmute button. Taruna Schulke from the City of Ventura, Sarah from the Ventura Water Department.
Sean. Okay. Great. I think that's all for now. If anyone comes in, we'll just have them put their name in the chat. And we can move on to any pertinent GSA updates. I'd like to give the opportunity for a Fox Canyon representative to share.
Yeah, thanks, Lauren. It's John. I'll give an update. And I see you noted on there updates from the March workshop, so I appreciate that. So that workshop was on March 10th. The agency had what we believe the first ever stakeholder workshop. One thing we had learned is that, despite people being perhaps stakeholders and ratepayers for a long time with us, our rules are kind of complex and they keep shifting every few years and they change and we introduce new things and it's just been a lot of uncertainty. So we decided to have the stakeholder workshop just to clarify and try to educate on all of our processes and procedures, everything from registering a new well to calibration and certainly reporting usage, because that's a requirement twice a year to report usage. So we did this. We weren't sure like really how many people would be interested. We thought there was definitely some interest. And we were a little bit shocked because we had 40 people in person and another 42 joined online. So a total of 82 people participated in the workshop, which exceeded even the highest of our estimates. And we were really pleased. And I think what it did is it reinforced probably the need to have this type of thing. So we plan to do more in the future, including the next one would be on those issues that are specific to our water master role up in the Las Posas Valley, because that is, of course, there are some different procedures from the regular agency reporting requirements. Other than that, we just keep marching forward. We just had our monthly board meeting yesterday, and more to follow on our allocation ordinance. I know there's a lot of interest in that. We will be making some announcements in the near future on that. So that's all I have for today. Thank you.
Thanks, John. I don't think Brian Bondi is joining us from Mound Basin, but if there's any other representative, feel free to share. Anyone? Okay. Should we move to Fillmore and Piru?
Sure. Tony Emmert with Fillmore and Pirate Basin's GSA. At the upcoming May meeting, I believe that's May 21st, there'll be a few status updates on some of the agency's work. There's been a lot of work gearing up towards understanding the Santa Clara River and groundwater basins interaction on a stream reach by stream reach basis. And that sounds like an easy thing to do, but in the Santa Clara River, it's not easy because we have portions of the river that flow and then disappear to groundwater and then reappear where the geology constricts again. And that hasn't always been the reason that surface water and groundwater monitoring has been looked at. And so a big effort has been trying to gain additional monitoring wells, specifically shallow monitoring wells at some of these key places, and then doing some, well-controlled observations of conditions. So for example, there hasn't been that much specific monitoring at the Sespe Creek Santa Clara River confluence, but that's clearly an important location to learn about. But because the Santa Clara River and Sespe Creek also are almost all owned by private parties, it's not a quick thing to just go out and trespass on somebody's property and monitor. So that's been a major long-term effort by this GSA to establish relationships with the property owners, to see if we can find shallow wells that are perforated shallow and not deeper, and start gaining regular information that would be for the ongoing basis, as well as just doing some biological surveys of those areas. So there's going to be a presentation at the meeting on the 21st over at the Fillmore City Hall, and it's also available online. So that might be interesting to folks. The main effort for that GSA at this point is to do the 5-year periodic update on it's a self-evaluation essentially for the two basins to see how is the GSA doing on accomplishing the things that were in its GSPs. The agency had planned on perhaps updating its GSPs at the same time as doing the 5 years. However, modeling and other things, the GSA utilizes United's modeling crew, and because of critical tasks in modeling, like for example, supporting on the OPV versus Bucks Canyon litigation, that took several months away from the modeling. So essentially the schedule slipped back. And so there's just not going to be enough time to do updating 2 full GSPs at the same time as doing 2 5-year periodic evaluations. So, so still it's quite a bit to do, but some interesting stuff going on there. And I think I'll stop there. Any questions?
Thank you, Tony. Brian, I saw that you joined. Do you have any quick updates on the Mound Basin?
Hi, trying to turn my camera on here. Good morning. Sorry, I was a few minutes late. Circumstances beyond my control. Yeah, quick updates. So we, a lot of overlap with what Tony's saying in terms of the GSP periodic evaluation. That process is going on. We will have a draft of that evaluation report coming out this summer. We'll have a workshop, and then we'll have a public comment period on that document. Like Fillmore Pyru, we are also not planning to update our GSP at this time, but for different reasons. Mainly because we need to install a critical monitoring well near the coast to monitor for seawater intrusion. And so we need to get that well installed and get some baseline data before we'll be in a position to update our sustainability criteria. So that's the main reason why we won't be doing the update. But I think for the next evaluation, we will have an update of that GSP. Other than that, our annual report was submitted. It's available online for those who are interested. And yeah, we're going through the permitting process. Hope to have our coastal development permit and encroachment permits from the city of Ventura here shortly, and be going out to bid later this year for the monitoring well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us, Brian. And is Rick Vasilopoulos here from Santa Clarita Valley Water? Okay, no problem. We will move on to any general committee updates. This is open floor, so if anyone has any events or things they'd like to share, please feel free to raise your hand in person. Okay, are there any people online? I'm going to call out Christina because I know we have an RCD event coming up.
Hi, sorry, I couldn't figure out how to raise my hand. Yeah, so my name is Christina, the RCD. I work on the agriculture team, and we have an upcoming Agriculture Resources 101 event on April 30th. It's actually in the United Water District building that you are all in at the moment, and also on Zoom. And this event was created to kind of understand the county's resource concerns as they relate to agriculture. And then we also want to provide farmers and ranchers and community members with all of the resources we can gather that are free to producers in our county, whether they be technical or financial assistance. And so Jody actually from the Farm Bureau will be speaking, as well as the RCD. The Farm Bureau will be speaking about the ag order and addressing the VCALC requirements, and RCD will be speaking about some of our water resource programs and grant opportunities for producers. There'll be 16 organizations from the county that provide free resources to producers. So it's a good opportunity to understand what the assistance landscape in the county is for producers, and also to gather information from the producers themselves about what the issues they're seeing are. So yeah, if anybody is interested in learning more about that space, feel free to join in person or on Zoom, or share with your network as you see fit. But yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Christina. If you have a registration link, feel free to share it while we move on in the meeting. Okay. Are there any other updates anyone would like to share? Okay. I'll move on to the coordinator update. So I have a quick presentation, and I just wanted to share some like where we're at with the development of our charter. And we have a great working group that has been helping us develop it since, well, we formed the working group in June of last year, but we've been having edits and things like that more towards the winter of last year. And we hoped that by this meeting, it would be able to be presented for ratification. But after a couple conversations, we have a couple things to kind of figure out first, discuss, and I still just wanted to share our progress and be transparent with this
Lauren,
group.
can
Yes.
we, sorry to interrupt you, but can we, before that decision is made, can we see it and then we can decide whether those issues do need to move forward or we can vote on it today?
Yeah, definitely. Just didn't want to be too preemptive about it, but I'll show you all the updates and share what kind of comments we went through. Okay. Okay. All right. So, like I said, we'll go over the charter. After a couple conversations with people the last month, the last 2 months, I've added some changes and let's see. Per the last presentation, I kind of shared that this is the outline for the charter, and it has 10 full sections. 11 is a fund endorsement option where people can sign on and show their support. And we focused on the membership, roles and responsibilities, meetings and decision making, and the opportunity for amendments and review. And just as a reminder, this charter has been available for people to see via our newsletter. It also has been posted on our website. And we did take comments from the public the Santa Clara River Watershed Committee, all of those people enrolled in our newsletter from February 25th to March 25th. And we only got a handful of comments that were integrated accordingly. So yeah, I'd like to start with just addressing the membership. This did change a little bit. The membership is still open to all interested parties. It includes environmental groups, agencies, tribes, landowners, ag operators, individuals, basically anyone who's interested in and engaged in our local basin, interested in our watershed's health and sustainability. And we do have a geographic focus that includes Ventura and Los Angeles counties. The general members is anyone interested in the public. The watershed coordinator is a part-time position currently housed at the RCD. And where we had an addition was the need for written out subcommittees and task forces. So this would be topic specific, any temporary groups that are formed as needed to advance any collaborative efforts. This is an informal subcommittee, informal task force, but it can be guided and built out of this committee. And I think that the development of the charter is a great example of what a subcommittee or task force can look like. We've formed our steering committee to push forward the development of a charter. And then we have our executive committee, which will be our have voting power in the group, and this includes partners to provide funding to sustain the coordinator role, but it also includes non-paying partners. And these positions are structured to ensure balanced representation across the watershed. It includes our local government representation. It includes representation from our GSAs. It includes agriculture, environmental conservation organizations, and it also will include one flexible community seat reserved to incorporate emerging or previously unrepresented interests. And to kind of share how the categories look, I have this chart. So in total, this is 22 seats, and this will include an annually selected chair and vice chair position. And those positions will be filled by active community executive committee participants of the time. So this is kind of the outline of how the framework will look, and what organizations participate is outlined on the next slide. You can find this in our amendments and review section. So the charter is a living document and may be amended as needed, but once this charter is approved, amendments may be proposed by any member, submitted to the watershed coordinator, and adopted by consensus of the executive committee. Our executive committee representatives will be reviewed every 2 years to identify where participation can be improved. All of these organizations will have a role, but they decide who their representative will be for this group. And then in addition, that we also had is the positions highlighted in yellow are positions that have the opportunity to change. Their category will stay the same. So there's 3 positions in the environmental conservation, or 3 seats in the environmental conservation section. But one of them can be reviewed every 2 years. If there's an emerging interest group that's different than the one that's already in the position, then they'll have the opportunity to be nominated in and voted in. Right now, our idea is Channel Islands Restoration, because they have been a part of this working group and have helped develop this charter and have shown a strong interest. But we recognize there's a ton of environmental conservation groups in the Santa Clara River. It doesn't always have to be CIR. And that's the same thought process for our agriculture representatives. We currently have Limonera Ranch as a funding partner to contribute to the part-time coordinator position. They've been a partner for many years, but there are many large ag operations in Ventura County. Maybe there will be another landowner that is interested in participating. And for the upper watershed, the representative that has been participating is the upper watershed coordinator from the LA County Safe Clean Water Program. But like I said, maybe a different representative will show themselves when this is reviewed in the next 2 years. If people don't feel representative in those groups, or there's like another need that we identify, some people have said that we want to have input from like more academic and research driven folks or business folks. And I think that this community representative seat that's flexible is a great spot to fill those gaps. And I saw a comment like, what does the red mean? So the red is just denoting who we still are in conversation with, or who we have not yet reached out in terms of having this detailed of a conversation with yet. So Watershed Protection District, we have a representative. They are on board with joining our meetings, but the last we talked, they have to share it with like their higher representatives before they can like officially say that they would like to be a part of our executive committee. The same with the city of Oxnard and city of Santa Clarita and Mound Basin. They were one of the groups that reached out to us during the public comment period and shared that they are really interested in being a part of the executive committee and think that all the GSAs should be represented. And we also recognize that we haven't had representation from our tribal governments yet. And we see it as being very important that at least seats are held for them. And why I phrased it this way is because in Ventura County, we have 2 governments that are in our county lines. That's the Barbareño-Ventureño Band of Mission Indians and the Fernandeño-Tatavian Band of Mission Indians. And I've tried to reach out to some contacts that I have with them to start bridging these conversations, but we just have yet to reach each other. And we also got a couple comments that maybe there's the need for a stipend to participate, and that's a conversation to have, I think, with our working group or like the further development of this charter. Does anybody have questions about this? This is maybe the most complicated slide. Yes.
I have one question. So we see Mound Basin in red, and there was a comment you said that the GSA should be represented. I'm wondering, what about Fillmore Piru Basin GSA? And Tony, maybe you can speak to that. Is that something we'd want on that list?
Currently, I can represent both, but that's probably a good question. So that might be something in the future that we have not talked with that board about being part of this. So I think before saying yes, but I don't see why not. It's a significant portion of the watershed, and I would certainly be willing to represent that one if that board is supportive.
Did someone had mentioned it's an adjudicated basin of Santa Paula, but I feel like that's one that we haven't had a strong.
I'm on the board of that one.
Okay. Okay, great. Yeah. Okay.
Lauren, I saw in the chat there was a question to clarify what the red indicates. She answered that. And that they're rotating or that they're optional positions.
Yeah. So I'll offer more clarification on red. Overall, red just means pending. But the ones highlighted are the seats that are up for review as a organization. So the environmental org can change every 2 years. That is on the seat that has the seat. A representative from the upper watershed can change every 2 years. That's a seat position. But ideally, these seats are filled.
Can I comment on that? What in the discussion that we've previously had, so like for me, so I'm Lisa Tate, I'm small ag, I'm in that spot right now. That seat is held for small ag, but my position, me as the representative, can change fluidly. So that's what we wanted. That's what I think we were trying to show, is that some of these organizations will get to pick who they have as their representative, regardless of what the committee thinks. But then some of them are going to be decided on by the committee. So small ag would be one of those positions that the committee would get to decide who they want as their small ag representative.
Also to follow up, Lauren, on what Lisa said, we wanted to make sure that we included opportunities for other organizations in those relevant positions. So it's not, Channel Islands registration doesn't automatically go through every 2 years if there are other interested contractors, for example, restoration contractors, they can be considered. So it's kind of like voting in the who's filling that position every year, every 2 years, which seemed fair to us.
Thank you, Holly. Yeah, can I offer any other clarification? Are there questions in the chat or online? Okay. This was the slide I was most daunted, like was very daunting to share just because there's a lot going on. So thank you. And I do have the full charter available as a link to just like scroll through to see visually. And those sections, like section 7 is the same as it is here. Section 9, amendments and review, it just looks a little less colorful because it's in a document and not a PowerPoint. And then we have that same breakdown of positions just in a chart instead of on a slide. And gotta go. Okay. What's next? So meetings and decision making, our general committee meets quarterly. The executive committee meets annually, at least to approve our coordinator work plan. And they also will meet as needed throughout the year. Subcommittees and task forces meet as necessary. And the executive committee holds formal voting authority and will strive for consensus whenever possible. And when it cannot be reached, a simple majority vote of those present will decide. Our quorum would be 50% of the seated executive committee members. Any standard decisions will be a simple majority vote, and any major decisions will be a 2/3 supermajority vote. We do want to note too that any substantive strategic changes will be shared with the general committee through our newsletter, through access to it on the website, through presentations here. And will be hopefully approved by our general members through a simple majority of those present. And we want to keep this like as transparent as possible, just because we're, structuring a type of leadership, it doesn't mean that we're trying to take away from our general committee members at all. And so transparency and accessibility and involvement will continue to exist. So I'll leave a couple. It seems like we have a couple things to address, like the Fillmore, like talking with Fillmore and Piru, temperature check on if we can pose the question for adoption or be ready for it at the next meeting.
I'd like to move forward with the charter today, if possible. I feel like we've had a lot of time to consider this and talk about it. And I also have no issue with adding or changing, like we said, it's a fluid document, but my concern is that the longer we go, the more we forget of the discussions we've had and why the decisions were made. And the whole point of getting this charter going was so that there was like an official way to make decisions for this organization, which we don't currently have right now. So I would love to just, if there are not any major issues with it, at least that put that in place, and then we can change who those executive committee members are as needed.
Do we have any other thoughts in the room? Any responses online? And then I can follow up.
That sounds fine as long as there's a way that we can change it easily. I mean, as long as we have that in place. And then there's also the question of the MOU and getting that moving along too.
Yeah, I think definitely the MOU is a good point that I think almost all the public entities that are going to require any kind of invoices to be backed up by some kind of an official document, that's going to be something that's a work task that we have to do really soon. And just one thing to point out is we on this makeup of the executive committee, we're tending to be inclusive, which I think is in the spirit of having a watershed committee. But a potential practical thing to think about is when you have 22 members and you're requiring 23 to adopt your budget, sometimes it may be tough to get 2/3 present for a meeting. So, so that's just something to be aware of if we're requiring that. Because I've been on some before where it's tough to get all the voting members and a supermajority for adopting your budget. So that just might be a practical last thing that we want to think about is are the 22 committed to be there when we have to make the decisions?
Yeah, just to follow up on that, Tony, I think it's important to go back to Friends of Santa Clara River and ask, because although there are people that can, Friends of Santa Clara River in itself is obviously an important member, but and the individuals, but whether their schedules are going to enable them to be here, I think is a really important question that we need to ask them. Because obviously I can't vote twice and I'm not in that position anyway.
For today's meeting would be an example if we were adopting, you know, if we're approving our budget or some major consideration, we might not have a 2/3 supermajority present in this meeting. So it's just something to think of with that. I understand why we're saying that, but it gets a little bit more difficult as the group gets bigger. And, you know, I was going to say, look at the US Congress, but maybe that's a bad example.
It doesn't really, I think we tried to keep some flexibility. Like we didn't want this executive committee to just be able to make changes. So we did want a little bit of control there. But I think also, there's nothing that says we can't shoot out an email. How do you vote on this? You know, are you in favor of this? It doesn't have to be present at that meeting necessarily. So I think there is some workaround room for that.
As long as we've thought about that and everybody's okay with that, yeah, because that will occasionally be a problem.
And additionally, I think it says seated members, so there may be some slots that are not filled because we don't have we don't have somebody doing that position, and so that wouldn't be considered a seated member.
Yeah, we'll hear from Peter really fast.
Well, I just wanted to mention that maybe if someone couldn't attend in person, that they would be able to review the document and submit an approval for something that would be voted on, like a budget, via email, and make sure that everyone that is included in the approval process would be aware of that via CCing on the email. And would there be designated people voting? Like, I know there's agencies, but are we just fine with agencies or groups or organizations or people? But within these agencies, do we want to identify who these people specifically are that can vote for a certain topic, such as a budget? And I'm fine with flexibility, though. I just want to ask that question. Not naming a person, that would be it. Not naming a person, allowing for flexibility.
I think those are good points. I think the intent was that the organization would designate a person that's their voting member. And then I think maybe we could add a few words to the charter to say on those 2/3 vote that a proxy is allowed. And I think everybody's going to get what a proxy is. So that can be an email or whatever we want. We can work out the details, but that would probably be a workaround or a clarification that could show that if we don't have people in the room or participating in the meeting, that a proxy is allowed.
Okay. I think with that being said, with the addition of the proxy in our charter, we are going to pose the question, if you would like to approve the framework of this charter, please raise your hand if you are a virtual participant. And in person, raise your hand also.
Lauren, I can't raise my hand. I'm sorry on this chat. But yes, I am raising my hand. Sorry.
Yeah, me too. I'm not technically savvy enough to raise my hand on Zoom, but yes, John Demers said votes yes.
Did you hear that? Those that couldn't raise their hands, you could add it to the chat and then our executive team will have a record of your vote.
Okay, for extra clarification, if anyone opposes the adoption of this charter, can you please share? Okay, thank you all so much. Yay! So I originally had this meeting to end around 10:30 so we can have our charter working group talk after this. I just want to note that I'm happy with the meeting going a little bit longer since we did so much discussion right now. So yeah, I'd like to move on to our next presentation. It's the Ventura River Watershed, resiliency plan, and we have Lynn and Laura here to share and present. And we also have two representatives from the Department of Water Resources here, Anne Marie Orr and maybe Eric Sy. If not, maybe just Anne Marie Orr. Anne Marie, would you like to just introduce yourself really quickly?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Anne Marie Warren. I'm the program manager for the Prop 4 Watershed Resilience solicitation that's upcoming. So I'm here today to tell you a little bit about that. But I think I'm going to be going later on in the meeting. Yeah.
Definitely. Thank you. I just wanted to introduce you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh.
These hand raised. Sean, is your hand raised from earlier in the agenda, or do you have a question before we get started? I saw your hands raised. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for being here, and I will start your presentation.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having us. My name is Laura Schellenbarger. I'm here with Lynn Rodriguez as project managers on the Ventura River Watershed Resilience pilot project, supporting the Ventura County Resource Conservation District on this project. So we're happy to be back. It's been a while since we've come to this watershed and shared some about this project. I think we were here over a year ago, maybe, in the very beginning stages. So it's been an intensive project, and we are in the final days of the grant period. And we're here to share some of the lessons learned and what might be useful for the Santa Clara River watershed. So slide. We'll cover a brief overview of the program, how the Ventura River effort came together, some of the challenges, lessons learned, and then we're also going to focus on what we think is most relevant for the Santa Clara River Watershed Committee. And we also have, as Lauren pointed out, and we already heard from Anne Marie Orr from DWR, and potentially Eric Sy as well will be joining to share some more about Prop 4 solicitation. Next slide. So some basics, kind of the nuts and bolts of the grant program. The Watershed Resilience Program is part of a broader statewide effort through the California Water Plan to focus on climate resilience, watershed scale planning, with also a strong focus on equity and inclusion. The pilot efforts, there were 5 of them across the state. They were really there to test what it looks like in practice. And so there was a lot of heavy involvement and collaboration with DWR throughout this process as well. They provided a lot of guidance and framework documents, which they have looked to us also to provide feedback on. So I believe those will be maybe even be updated as well moving forward. But some basics again. Each pilot received, each of the 5, $2 million for this planning effort over a period of 2 years. I would say, real bulk of the work was conducted in about 18 months of an intensive process. The other pilot regions are listed here: the Russian River, American River, Calveras, Pajaro River, and of course, Ventura. Again, our grant expires in a few days, so we are at the very last stages of wrapping everything up. And I know a lot of us are feeling a little more relief at the moment. Okay. You can go on to the next stage. So slide. Yeah. So what basics of a watershed resilience plan? What is it really? It's our climate informed watershed scale planning effort. At its core, it connects the different systems of water supply, flood management, ecosystems, communities. Main focus is identifying vulnerabilities and adaptation strategies across them. It was a real more looking at more of a systems approach. There's both a qualitative and also a quantitative aspect of it, which we don't get into a lot of detail here on these, but we are happy to take questions and come back and talk more about them. It also places a strong emphasis on equity and partnerships and watershed network. So yeah, purpose of it, building stronger community base. Move on, next slide. The intent is also assessing climate risks and developing adaptation strategies, like we said, and of course, building on existing efforts like IRWM and local planning efforts. And from there, I'm going to turn it over to Lynn to cover some more about our efforts and how the plan came together.
Yeah, you want to
move on.
Next slide. Thank you, Laura. Well, it's great to be at this phase. We can breathe again. I know Adriana Stovall from our Rincon team is online today. I'm not sure if anybody else from our team is, but I wanted to just take a quick second to highlight the fact that this was a huge lift for a lot of people. Laura and I worked quite a bit as project managers in the details as well as the high level. Other staff at the RCD were very involved. And then, of course, the consultant team, which consisted of Rincon consultants, Stantec consultants. We had the Native Coast Action Network working with us on the tribal issues. And we had Cal State University, who worked with us during the DACD, the Water Talks Underserved Community Grant Program that ended in 2024. Am I forgetting? Oh, and the Eagle Rock Analytics, specialists in climate projections. So we had a really great team that pulled all this together in a short time. Just to point out that some of the other regions or pilots had one consultant. Maybe they had some subs, but we worked with a diverse group. We also had CAUSE, which does our underserved community engagement. And well, I wanted to talk a little bit about what's in the plan. Sorry. Anyway, I just want to make that note. This was a big lift. And hopefully if they do this again, they'll extend the time frame, through the grant. So we are happy to say that I believe by the end of this week, which is tomorrow, we will have the final plan. We sent it back for a few little modifications, and it needs to run through the ADA accessibility process. But it's really a great document, and it's divided into the main plan, and then, of course, massive appendices where all of the technical information, methodology, a lot of details are contained there. The main plan, we tried to keep it to 100 pages, but it ended up being more like 150 or 60. So here's the elements of the main plan. So there's a pretty nice executive summary that can be used as a handout for electeds and others. An introduction, the watershed network. These are all as the requirements of the state guidelines. They wanted us to follow certain path for our plans. The watershed network was the keystone of this. It was developing or strengthening the existing network so that we could get the work done in a comprehensive way and inclusive way. So that is well described. Then there's the state of the watershed, which is basically an update in some ways to what was in the watershed management plan for the Ventura River. That was a keystone document for the watershed, still is a resource. And we did not want to, we're not reinventing that plan. This is an additional deeper dive on certain topics that were not addressed in that plan. So we still want to make sure they both get kind of highlighted. So the state of the watershed includes one key element the state wanted, which was a definition of statements of problems that we worked on as collaboration with all the partners on deciding what those were. And so those are a separate kind of section of that chapter. Then there's the future climate conditions, the work that Eagle Rock Analytics provided. Just so you know, back in the 2019 IRWM plan amendment, we had included climate projections from two great climatologists from Desert Research Institute for the whole county. We went back to them. They suggested that Eagle Rock Analytics had the right skill set because they couldn't do it anymore. So we decided to hire, to work with them to develop the future climate conditions. And some of their information pertains to this watershed, so that will be helpful. Climate change vulnerability, I would say that's where a lot of the brain power went, was looking at what are our vulnerabilities, both from the standpoint of what our key partners thought, and primarily these are vulnerabilities to our water resources systems, but also to other aspects like habitat and ecosystems and communities. So that section is quite robust. Also related, and I can't remember now if it's in which chapter it's in, but we did and it's not listed here, but a historic water budget, which was something the state required us to do. Historical water budget. That was also a deep dive, if you will, into all the data that's available and coming up with a point in time. It's really just a snapshot of right now. Some people would like to see a more comprehensive water budget developed for that watershed, and we'll see where that goes. Then a lot of work went into the developing adaptation strategies, actions, and implementation roadmaps. Again, we looked at what was already in the IRWM plan, what was already in other places, and built on that. That's an extensive chapter with all of the information for how we move forward to implement the strategies developed based on our vulnerabilities. And then the performance indicators, another requirement is how are you going to monitor your performance and what are your indicators going forward? So that's what what's in the plan. So any questions about that? Okay, moving on. Just quickly, this is kind of how we did it. The collaboration and the network was based on the Watershed Council, which had been in place about the same amount of time as this committee. 2006 is when it was formed. In order to because there's 500 plus people on the mailing list for the council and a large group of people involved in that watershed, we created a technical advisory group, much smaller group of key partners, and we met 11 times. We met a number of times and went through everything that we also had some broad public input on or council-wide input on. We also took through the advisory committee. So we had multiple pathways to get input, and they reviewed some really important elements along the way. One of the things that we had to do was similar to what you did today with your charter, is we had to show the state that we had a governing process. So we had some procedures for the governance. We already had an existing charter in that watershed, which is now going to be revised based on the outcome of the plan. So they'll be going through that same process you just went through. And then we wanted to have direct engagement with our underserved communities and our tribes. And honestly, this was a great part of the process. It was a heavy lift to work with the tribal partners who have many other things to do, many things on their plate, but we succeeded in setting up a good relationship with the Barbareño Ventureño Band of Chumash Indians, with the tribal chair and some of the council members, as well as Julie Tumamite-Stensley, who many of you know has been around for a long time, elder in the Chumash community. We built the frontline communities engagement around what we learned in the Water Talks program, using even the same entity cause to help us to get there. And we'll talk just briefly about some of the things they did. we had 4 forums, 1 online, 3 in person. We held those at Camp Arnez up in Oakview. Those were great because, as you know, not as many in-person meetings happen. Really needed to have that depth of engagement, and that was great. And they were facilitated by Rincon, and one of them was partially facilitated by the tribal chair, or BVBMI. And then lastly, we had the website, we had a newsletter, 1 newsletter, we had and emails that would come out about progress on the process. Any questions about that? Okay, next slide. Just a little bit more about what CAUSE did. They actually did what they did for us in the DACD grant, which was to go out in the community, interview people, do surveys on the phone or recorded, and then came up with a sense of what do the community members want, what is their concern about climate change impacts. And we did this actually outside of this program. We went and met with key partners and asked them the same question. So we started with what keeps you up at night? What are the climate hazards that cause you the most concern? And we said the same thing. We asked the same question of our community members, got some great data. And then there were 2 focus groups held, in-person meetings, to formalize that a little bit more, to do a deeper dive on what they wanted, which was incorporated into the outcomes of the strategies. And then I already mentioned the tribal collaboration, so we're very proud of that. Next slide. And then what we had Cal State University do for us, and they had worked closely with us during the Water Talks program, was an assessment of the network. And that was a very high priority item for DWR and for us. They did a great job finding a platform that actually Laura found called Kumu. And they used that platform. They did a survey. I think 58 people participated, or entities participated in the survey. And what we did is we came up with this great expose of how everybody's connected to everybody else, where the gaps are, how do we need to work together effectively to implement projects going forward. So it's kind of a cool thing. There's also a dashboard, which is on the website, and we can share those resources later.
These are interactive.
Yes. Okay, next slide. And sort of midway through the process, we did a visioning session at the first of our in-person forums, and came up with a vision that is similar to the vision from the Watershed Management Plan, but it differs in a few ways. So it was a good exercise for us to go through again. That shows some of the folks working on that. Next slide. And then I think this is my last slide. No, this is your slide. So if there's any questions about that that's just like a really overview of the early parts of the plan, and Laura's going to focus in on some of the more technical stuff that we did.
Well, just then, I guess basically to summarize really is that that a lot, just want to highlight, like, this didn't happen automatically. It really worked because we had an existing watershed council structure, these things that I think really benefited us and set us off for success. We had dedicated coordination with RCD staff, and then Lynn and I kind of supporting RCD staff as their an extension in some ways as project managers. Having that strong partner engagement. We didn't have 100% partner engagement, but we had strong partner engagement, and that was really critical and enough. Also using community-based organizations that know our community well. I will also say just having RCD staff and Lynn and I involved, and the partners, everybody involved, just knowing the issues very well. Having that familiarity with the watershed was really critical in a lot of the steps along the way. And then sustained effort, building the support and meaningful engagement with tribal partners. That just emphasizing that work requires time and intentionality. It's not just agency coordination. It includes a lot, tribal sovereignty and relationship building. And so it's something that really needs to be deliberate and thought about early, and you move at the speed of trust, as people, will say. So that was also something that I think was throughout the whole development of the plan and still continues to be something that we're working on in Ventura Watershed. Okay, next slide. So before kind of going back to some of the other components of the plan, before getting into the vulnerabilities and strategies, one of the first steps was that we established a shared understanding of the climate hazards affecting the watershed. Lynn, I think, mentioned this, is that early on we did meet with key partners and ask them, you know, what keeps them up at night, what climate hazards or disasters do they see posing the greatest risk to especially their water systems, their systems that they are managing. And we also looking at past climate events as examples and observed impacts. Then when we got together, we worked on aligning partners in our technical advisory group and also at our first community forums around key watershed challenges. And that's actually led to those problem statements that Lynn mentioned are in the plan. It's a requirement in which hazards matter the most and how they affect the watershed as a whole. That created a common foundation for the vulnerability assessment. It also helped us build out an asset list. And we worked collectively, we defined a set of climate metrics and thresholds to help evaluate exposure across the watershed. So the results really were, next slide, a shared watershed scale understanding of the climate risks across the water systems and across jurisdictions. This is where we also worked really closely with the technical team led by Rincon, along with Eagle Rock Analytics and others to apply the climate projections and evaluate vulnerability across the watershed. Again, this is a qualitative assessment. We also spent time meeting with the asset managers to confirm our understanding of, you know, the different water systems and their vulnerability or sensitivity to these different climate hazards, how sensitive they are to wildfire. So just to confirming that our vulnerability kind of scoring was reflective of reality here in the Ventura watershed. And it became really especially important was what became important was not just the individual hazards, but also, of course, how they interact and compound upon each other. For example, of course, we all know wildfire followed by extreme rainfall events leads to higher debris flows and more chances of higher risk flooding and water quality impacts. So that just is a continuous, you know, story that constantly comes up is the compounding effects of these hazards and the sequencing also of them. So just also wanted to point out, of course, that the same hazard types here, maybe not quite some of the sea level rise, just given the scale of the Santa Clara River watershed, but you've got all of these same climate hazard types in the Santa Clara River watershed and are relevant. And also, as I mentioned, the downscaled climate modeling that was done for the Ventura River watershed actually extended into the Santa Clara. So that data and those that modeling and information is available. So the same type of vulnerability and exposure analysis could be done. In the end, just to let you know, the plan included 23 strategies with a total of 80 actions across the watershed that could be taken. And you go to the next slide. What else do we got here? So,
is there any you want to?
Yeah, any questions about those aspects of the plan or how we did it? Okay.
And I'm sure the consultants would be happy to come back and
yes,
share more information with you about the process, because it was very involved.
Yeah.
And could be replicated.
Yes. Yeah.
No, it's so true.
We chose not to, we're not focusing on the how we did it exactly today, but we're happy to come back if we just figured if that was something of interest on the quantitative or the water budget. Those are we also have recordings as well. I guess one thing to highlight, and we could share it as well if you're interested in there was a presentation given by Eagle Rock Analytics on just the climate projections. And I believe, if I recall, that was back in like a December last year, I think. And that was recorded. It was at a Watershed Council meeting in Ventura. So we can share that as well. And I think that those maps they showed might have also even extended into Santa Clara and what they presented at that meeting. So yeah, how this can support the Santa Clara. I mean, really the WRP, the Ventura River WRP provides the existing plan framework. Some of the analysis can be replicated. And data, like we said, already extends to Santa Clara for at least the climate projections and threats. Also, the lessons learned. We would really hope that if this is ever something you pursue in whatever shape or form, that we did provide a pretty detailed lessons learned, both to DWR as they requested it, and also I'm sure RCD or Lynn and I and others are always happy to provide some of our challenges and pitfalls to help you avoid them. Similarities, there's also similarities between the two watersheds, and then the strong collaboration as a foundation. You have your watershed committee already built or building and continuing to get stronger as well. Also the involvement, there's obviously entities that across the watersheds and so have been involved in both, including Jody, Farm Bureau, City of Ventura, County, yeah, and others, and RCD. So that experience could be helpful as well. And next slide. This is, I think, our last one, but yeah, just again, ultimately it could help move from collaboration of individual efforts to more coordinated and watershed scale approach to resilience and position the watershed for future funding. And Lynn, if you want to talk more, also wanted to share any more.
Yeah, on that note, because with the genesis of the Watershed Resilience Project or program at the state, they've sort of pivoted a little bit away from IRWM, focusing on a watershed scale to do kind of the same thing. There's been a lot of discussion about that. What happened to IRWM? Is that now over? Is this the new thing? And so, but they did say in their guidelines, make sure that you're building on, what you had already. And I think our watershed out of the 5 pilots had the most connection between our IRWM effort and our Prop 1 DACD grant program effort and this. So, but it's important, to build on what's already been done. And we constantly ask the consultants, make sure you look at these other documents when you're doing this. I hate to see a stranded planning asset. And the same is true for the Watershed Management Plan, of course. Water Talks program, there's so much work going on. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why they selected the Ventura River watershed, is that we have a lot going on. The state's been paying close attention to the watershed because of problems with water quality in the river and just what's happening with Matilaha. So they're very closely watching that watershed. But I think in the end, we did a good job of connecting all of those pieces that are out there happening. And the same would be true here, only on a larger scale in this watershed. So that's, to me, having worked in this field for a very long time, I do not like to see any entity, whether it's the state or local agencies, just keep moving in a linear fashion without bringing the past along to learn from it. So that's one of my bugaboos, but it takes more time. I mean, you definitely have to focus in on what's already there and how can you strengthen it.
And just reflecting, realizing something else I think we could highlight for this watershed is, and maybe Lauren would want to speak about this, is that now moving into implementation phase, one of the things that came out of this was not just those, I think I said 80 or something, this 80 actions, but a few of them we identified and wrote out more detailed implementation roadmaps for. So, and that's also in the plan you'll see of, even funding opportunities, the steps that it would take, the lead agency and the coordinating agencies or partners. So there's some implementation roadmaps, and we got together and we selected the ones that we wanted to focus the most on. We're not necessarily we prioritized the ones that required multi-agency coordination, and that maybe didn't have needed some further development. So we spent time sitting down and developing those out. And I think that also gives, as for the Watershed Committee now, a starting place for, maybe some of those sub-working groups or, action teams that the coordinator can help support in moving along and checking back on how we've developed progress. So that was kind of nice, and that providing something that could be rolled into a work plan for the Watershed Committee and giving them some guidance. It was a space to sit down and do that, and provided them the support to do it. So an extra bonus obviously has come out of it.
And we did see some new partnerships form. I mean, I'll say the Ventura River Watershed Council had a very robust list of partners to begin with, but some new people emerge or new entities that stayed on the sidelines and then it became a little bit more involved. So having something like this, and the Watershed Council went through the development of the Watershed Management Plan over like a 4-year period. And that really brought people together, and people actually have nostalgia over that process, if you can believe it. And I think a few people said they were frustrated with this process because it happened too quickly and didn't allow for some of the trust building, the relationship, expansion of people's thoughts and ideas coming together. And we're in the post-COVID era. And so there aren't as many in-person meetings like Lorraine Walter, who led the effort in the Ventura River Watershed. They were meeting between the subcommittees, and the council meetings were monthly, and they were in person. That was in the days before you could Zoom in. So there's reasons for that, but in order to build and develop new partnerships, there has to be an intentionality about reaching out to folks that haven't been at the table and saying, hey, where is there something here for you? And that massive web of interconnections that the CSU team put together in Kumu really demonstrates, how many potential connections there are. So, yeah.
Are there any questions about this plan? Is this the last slide, or are there more slides? Okay, great. That's great.
Bonus slide about an implementation pathway or something if people want to see, but that's pretty much it.
Oh, nice. I think seeing the examples is great. It's like Laura said, we have a couple implementation roadmaps from all of the goals and strategies that were pulled out throughout the year in that plan. The implementation roadmaps are the full thought out guidelines for how achieving some of these projects can look. And I think this one, is it Arundel removal? Yeah, it is Arundel eradication in the Ventura River watershed. But I think to something that you said, we, on a very small coordinator scale of what we're existing right now, have been sending out a link to submit priority projects that you're interested in the Santa Clara River. And from our working group that's helped develop the charter, we've gotten the most input from. And maybe Rachel can share a screen really quickly to just show you. We have not been getting responses via the survey that's out in every newsletter for the last maybe 4 months. But that's okay, because we'll throw the link down again. We're always looking for input. And I will, if you don't mind, I'm going to stop sharing and just share what, let Rachel.
And I had one just more observation, and
yeah, please do.
Marie is lit up. I'm not sure why, but maybe you thought you're reading my mind. I just wanted to make a point that it was just a privilege to work with DWR on this level, on this project. In the past, having written a lot of IRWM plans and worked with the state, they had to be more hands off. This was a project where they could be our partner and be our advisor, because they had technical expertise that we were able to benefit from. And there was no, it's not competitive. It's we're here to give you our resources so you'll be successful, because this is a pilot. We want to see how that worked. then the question will be what happens next and how will the guidelines perhaps change? But I would imagine DWR would hopefully stay engaged at this level and provide the kind of support that we received to make this project work. So it was in all of our best interests, everybody's interest, to make sure that this was a successful project. And lastly, the final plan is going to get posted probably by Monday or Tuesday if we get it in time. So if you want to see, there is a version of it posted right now on if you go to the RCD's website and look at the climate resilience project, that'll come up. But the new one will be posted sometime, I guess, next week, and you can take a look.
Yeah, I didn't mean to sideline you guys. It seemed like a good pairing to just like share that this is something that can complement the framework that you pointed out. But I think a question, maybe I think this Anne Marie could help, but like what does the Prop 4 funding look like next? And, you know, I think I've been hearing that it's going to look a lot more like implementation funding and not a planning effort, but maybe there's still some uncertainty regarding that. But yeah, I just wanted to, do you guys have any thoughts before Anne Marie joins and shares? Okay. Thank you so much for presenting. And I really encourage like you guys all to check out the website and the plan because it's a really great document with so much information, and also Eagle Rock Analytics. That presentation is really great, so we'll send that in the newsletter after this. Anne Marie, if you're around, I would appreciate you can share your screen.
Yeah. Give me a minute here. I'm not used to using Zoom. I thought I was sharing, but apparently I'm not. Is that right?
Not yet.
Not yet. Let's see. Let me double click this. Okay. Now am I sharing?
Yes.
Okay. Am I sharing what I think I'm sharing, the Watershed Resilience Grant Program?
Yeah, that's what we see.
Okay. And then let's see if I can turn on my camera.
While we're doing this, we had a funny Zoom story one time, is that somebody thought they were sharing their slides and what they were really sharing was their chat. And they were saying like not very nice things about some of the other people in the meeting. It was a hilariously bad mistake, but it was funny to us to.
Yeah. That's funny. All right. I'm not finding my camera. Let's see. I see where it says view, start video. I don't think I want to do that. Well, Lynn, did you say that I was sharing that my camera was lit up before?
We did see you before. Now it's just your name, but your screen sharing looks great. So I think we're happy to move forward with that.
Yeah, we'll go with that. Okay. So, as I mentioned before, I'm Anne Marie Orr, and I work for the Department of Water Resources in our financial assistance branch, and I'll be overseeing the Prop 4 Watershed Resilience Grant Program. I pulled a few slides that we're going to be presenting on April 30th at our workshop, and so I hope you will all sign up, register and come. I'll share the link in a little bit to register for that. And what I have to present today is what we've developed to date, but I do want to mention before I start that the solicitation is still under development. And I'm really looking forward to doing more outreach and getting more feedback from all of you as we go through this process. So as you can see here, the program includes two separate sources of funding from within the Prop 4 bond. 100 million for watershed resilience and 75 million for conservation. And after you factor in all the bond costs and state ops, it ends up being a solicitation total amount of about 152.4 million. Now, of that money, we're planning to divide it into two solicitations. The implementation solicitation, which we're calling an early action implementation round. And we call it early action because we're going to be opening it up before the planning round. Because we know there are lots of projects out there that are ready to go. And we also know that planning takes time. So you'll be seeing implementation first. The specific amount of each solicitation is yet to be decided. In the workshop on the 30th, we have some pop-up polls planned where we're trying to kind of figure out how to structure that. I'll also be sharing some of the results from the survey that we recently conducted on this program. What else? A big difference with this planning is that we're calling it Planning Plus because we're planning to fund whatever the highest priority project or projects might be at the end of the watershed resilience planning effort. We want to fund it and let people implement it as part of that grant. Let's see. Next slide. With regard to the implementation solicitation, eligible projects for the conservation funding will be projects with a primary benefit of water savings. And eligible projects for the watershed resilience funding will be projects related to integrated regional water management that have a watershed level benefit. As far as program priorities go, our starting point is the bond language, and that is requiring prioritization of projects which leverage other funding, as well as projects that consult with or use the California Conservation Corps services. And of course, since this is the climate bond, we'll naturally be prioritizing projects which improve resiliency to climate change, and also projects that incorporate equity considerations at all levels. Now, with regard to the planning solicitation, which we're calling Planning Plus, when we talk about this round, I do want to clarify, because some people were confused, but we're speaking specifically about watershed resilience plans. And I'm really glad we got that presentation for the Ventura plan, so you all know exactly what that is. And then I would say the only I would say two things. There's going to be the addition of the implementation project at the end of that, but also we're evaluating the pilot projects right now and just trying to look at what worked, what didn't work. I do imagine that the watershed resilience plan will look very much like what those pilot projects implemented. That said, two of them were exactly the same, so we're just we're sorting through all that information right now. But we're just blown away at the quality and level of work that they were able to put out in such a short period of time. And so I did note that Lynn said you want more time, so we will be endeavoring to give folks more time as part of Prop 4 to develop those plans. Let's see. So back to the slide. So eligible projects for the planning will be either the completion of a brand new watershed resilience plan or completing or expanding work in existing plans that fosters climate resiliency at a watershed scale. And again, IRWM has been just the starting point of all of watershed resilience. And so we imagine there are plans out there that can be built upon. We don't want to scrap things. We want to build on what we've done in the past. Our current thinking is that the award side will be about $8 million. That's not set in stone. It is set in stone, though, that we will not be requiring cost share as part of the solicitation. And to further break down that $8 million, what we're envisioning right now is up to $3 million for the watershed resilience plan development, and then up to $5 million for immediate implementation of the highest priority project or projects in the plan. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know to get into this. Some of the details about we envision awarding the funding up front, but then after the planning is done and the project is selected, we'll go back and amend whatever that selected priority project is into the grant agreement. Let's see. As I mentioned, we have our April 30th virtual workshop from 9 to 12. I will also mention that this workshop is going to include both watershed resilience, the watershed resilience program, and the sustainable groundwater management program. So I think we'll have watershed resilience going first and then groundwater going second. And that solicitation is about, it's still in flux, but I'd say about 320 million. Expect an additional workshop this summer. We do have, the solicitation's under development, so there's a lot we're still working on, but we are hoping to get the draft guidelines out sometime between summer and fall. And then here's some contact resources. This is the general email address for the financial assistance branch. You're welcome to email me directly too. And then here, we also have our Watershed Resilience Program webpage. And I will send this PowerPoint to you for reference. Any questions?
Any questions in the room? Okay. Thank you so much, Anne Marie. That was perfect timing. We're about to end our meeting, and I really appreciate you being here. I've also been sharing the link with people to register for the April 30th workshop. So if you can, include it in the chat, but we'll also include it again in our newsletter after this presentation.
Yeah. I guess if you're closing this down, maybe that's the best way to handle the
Okay,
link.
let's do that then.
Okay.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
We had one more note on our agenda, which was just any, collaboration opportunities or time for an open floor discussion. I think we'll move on to closing the meeting, but are there any last comments people have before we end? Okay. So I'm going to excuse people in the general committee meeting, and if you have been involved in helping develop our charter, we're going to meet at 10:40, so in 10 minutes, and it'll be the same Zoom link, so you can just log back onto the Zoom or you can stay, but we'll just offer 10 minutes of a little break for people to get up, use the bathroom and whatnot. So if you are involved in that group, feel free to join in 10 minutes. And if not, thank you so much for joining. Bye.
Thank you.